you will never leave the solar system, or almost certainly not. Not you, not anyone alive in the world tonight, and maybe, if the universe has its way, no human being who ever lives. And not because of anything you could ever see. There's no wall out there, no fence, no barrier, no line drawn across the darkness that a ship could one day crash into. The thing that keeps us here is stranger and quieter than any wall could be. It's made of almost nothing at all, of distance and emptiness and the plain, unimaginable size of the dark around our small and ordinary world. And it may turn out to be one of the hardest barriers anything alive has ever come up against. We don't usually think of ourselves as trapped. We've walked on the moon. We've thrown machines past the farthest planets and out into the black. We tell ourselves, quietly, that reaching the stars is really just a matter of time, that a species clever enough, given long enough, will always find its way out eventually. It's a comforting story, and almost everyone believes some version of it. We've grown up on it. The starships, the colonies on distant worlds, the great human diaspora spreading out across the galaxy like our ancestors once spread across the Earth. It feels less like a prediction than a certainty, the obvious next chapter, just waiting for us to be ready. But the deeper you look into the actual physical facts of the thing, the real distances, the real speeds we can reach, the real dangers waiting in the space between the stars, the more that easy confidence begins to quietly dissolve, and you start to suspect something staggering, that we may be held here, in this one small pocket of the galaxy, not by any failure of our cleverness, but by the fundamental shape of the universe itself. So tonight, I want to walk you all the way out to that barrier, out past the moon, past the planets, past the farthest place anything human has ever reached, and then much, much further still, until you can feel, slowly and for yourself, exactly how vast and how silent the thing is that keeps us home. I'll level with you the whole way, because this is a subject people love to exaggerate, and the truth is remarkable enough without it. And I think that by the end, you may find that this cage, if it even is a cage, that turns out to be one of the most quietly comforting things there is, because the very same immensity that keeps you here is the thing that makes here worth staying. But we'll come to that. Let's begin close to home, with a single fact that almost no human mind can truly hold: how big space actually is. Here's the honest problem, and I'll admit up front that I share it. I don't really understand how large space is either. Nobody does. Not in the way you understand the size of a room, or the distance to the end of your street. Our minds were shaped over millions of years to handle the distances that mattered to staying alive. How far to the next tree, the next hill, the far side of the valley. That is the whole range our intuition was ever built for. A few miles, at most a few days' walk. It's a beautifully tuned instrument for the surface of one planet, and it fails completely the instant you point it upward at the sky. Ask someone how far away the moon is, or the sun, or the nearest star, and watch what actually happens. The words come out, the numbers get said, but nothing lands. The mind hears very large number of kilometres, and quietly files it away next to every other very large number, and moves on. That isn't stupidity, it's design. Nothing in the long line of your ancestors ever needed to feel the difference between 1,000,000 kilometres and 1,000,000,000. So nothing in you was ever built to feel it. Which means that for the rest of tonight, you're going to have to do something faintly unnatural. You're going to have to distrust your own sense of size and let the numbers and the travel times and the plain arithmetic do the feeling on your behalf. Because your gut is going to keep insisting that surely, with enough effort, we could get out there. And the arithmetic is about to answer, very calmly, that your gut has no idea what it's talking about. Right here, and over there, and a long walk away, those we can feel. But space is so far beyond that scale that the mind simply gives up and rounds it all off to a single, useless word. Far. Something is far. Something else is much farther. And to us, standing here, with our small and ancient brains, far and a million times farther, land in almost exactly the same place. They feel the same, but they're not the same. And the entire story of tonight lives in that gap, in the difference between far and unthinkably, catastrophically farther than far. A difference your mind cannot feel, but that turns out to decide everything. Let me try to break that spell just once with a small trick. Imagine you shrank the entire sun down to the size of a single grain of sand and set it on a table in front of you. On that scale, the whole sun, one grain of sand, the earth would be a speck of dust you could barely see, sitting about a hand's width away. Cozy, intimate. You could cup the entire inner solar system in your two open palms. Now on that same scale, where would the nearest other star be? Not across the table, not across the room, not even down the street. It would be another grain of sand, roughly 40 kilometers away. A full day's walk, far over the horizon, completely out of sight. That is the true spacing of things. Grains of sand separated by tens of kilometers of empty table, and that emptiness between them isn't a gap in the picture, it is the picture. The stars are almost nothing, scattered impossibly thin through an ocean of nothing. When we picture space, we picture the bright things, the suns, the planets, the glittering swirls of galaxies. But space is not the bright things. Space is the dark between them, and the dark is very nearly all of it. That is the scale we are really up against, not a distance you could ever walk off, a distance that swallows walking whole. So let's not trust our feelings for this. Feelings are useless at this scale. Instead, let's build the size of space up carefully, one honest step at a time, using the one thing that actually lets us cross a distance. Speed. Let's start with the fastest a human being has ever moved. Not in a car, not in a jet. The fastest any person has ever travelled in the entire history of our species. That record belongs to the astronauts coming home from the moon, more than half a century ago, falling back toward Earth at around 40,000 kilometers per hour. Sit with that number for a second, because it is genuinely, absurdly fast. Fast enough to cross an entire country in minutes, faster than a rifle bullet many times over. If you had been standing on the ground and one of them had streaked past you, you would not have seen a thing, just a sound, and then nothing, already gone over the horizon. That is the top speed of a human being, the fastest we have ever gone, and I want you to feel how hard won even that was, because it puts everything else tonight in proportion. To reach that speed, human beings strapped themselves to the top of a controlled explosion, as tall as a building, burned through an ocean of fuel in a matter of minutes, and flung themselves clean off the planet. Everything we knew, all our engineering, all our courage, all our money and genius poured into a single question of going as fast as we possibly could. And the answer that came back was 40,000 kilometers per hour. It sounds like a triumph, and for a fragile body of blood and bone, it truly is. It's far faster than any of your ancestors could ever have dreamed a person might move. But the universe does not grade on that curve. Against the distances we are about to face, that top human speed is very nearly standing still. It is the difference between a brisk walk and swimming an ocean. We built the fastest thing a living person has ever ridden, and space looked at it and did not so much as notice. And it is nowhere near enough, not even close. Hold on to how fast that felt, because we're about to leave it far behind. Because the fastest thing humanity has ever built is not a crude ship at all. It's a small, tough space probe, and the way it reached its speed is one of my favourite tricks in all of physics. It didn't just fire an engine and go, it fell. Over and over, it swung in close to the sun and used the sun's own enormous gravity like a slingshot, whipping around and around, stealing a little more speed on each pass, diving closer to that furnace than anything we've ever made. After years of this patient, looping fall, that probe is now moving at something like 630,000 kilometers per hour. Let me try to make that speed real, because the number alone won't do it. At that pace, you could go all the way around the entire Earth, the whole planet, pole to pole and back, in about 4 minutes. You could travel from the Earth to the Moon, a journey that took the Apollo astronauts 3 days, in around half an hour. It is, by an enormous margin, the fastest object human hands have ever created. It is very close to the practical edge of what we know how to do. So here is what I want you to do, in your mind, as you lie there. Let's be generous with ourselves. Let's pretend we've done the impossible engineering and we've built a great ship that can carry people, a warm, living crew with food and air and beds, and it can travel at that same staggering speed, the fastest speed we have ever achieved. Now with human beings aboard, pointed outward, ready to explore. It feels at last like we're ready to leave. Let's fly it out of the solar system together and see how far we get. And let's keep a careful eye on the clock, because the clock is where this story turns. Our first stop is Mars, the red planet, humanity's great dream, the world we've been promising ourselves for generations. With today's real rockets, a trip to Mars takes somewhere between 7 and 10 months of hard travel. But our imaginary ship is faster than anything real, so much faster. We cross the Gulf to Mars in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that's a holiday? That already feels like the future we were promised. So far, so wonderful. And this is the seduction of it. This first easy step is exactly what makes the whole journey feel possible. 2 weeks to another planet. It sounds like a long flight with an awkward layover. Everything in you relaxes and thinks, see, it's fine. Space is big, but we're clever, and the distances bend to us if we just go fast enough. Enjoy that feeling while it lasts, because it's genuinely true for now. For these first few steps, cleverness really does win. It's only much later, much further out, that you'll feel the floor of that confidence quietly drop away beneath you. Let's keep going, outward, away from the sun. The next great landmark is Pluto, out on the cold rim of the planets, and here the first little shadow falls across the trip, because even at our impossible speed, reaching Pluto takes about a year. A full year of travel, just to reach the edge of the familiar. Longer than we'd like, but still, a year. People have spent a year on far worse things. We can do a year. But notice what is already quietly happening to the numbers, even while we reassure ourselves. Mars was 2 weeks, Pluto is a year. That's roughly 25 times longer, for a step that, on any map of the whole galaxy, is still practically the house next door. The distances aren't merely adding up as we go outward, they're multiplying. Each step isn't a little bigger than the one before it, it's many times bigger, and the gaps are about to explode. We are climbing what feels like a gentle, manageable slope, quietly congratulating ourselves at each landmark. And we haven't yet noticed that the ground is curving upward beneath us, steeper and steeper toward a cliff. A year to Pluto sounds fine. Hold that word fine very loosely. It is not going to survive the next step. Onward. We pass a boundary called the heliopause, the place where the sun's wind finally gives out, and true interstellar space begins. It takes a couple more years to get there, and then, a little further, we pass a small quiet machine drifting in the dark. One of the Voyager probes, launched from Earth back in the 1970s, which has been travelling outward for over 50 years to reach this spot. Think about that little machine for a moment, because it's a real thing, not an imaginary one. It exists right now, drifting out there in the dark, the most distant object human hands have ever made or touched. It launched before most people alive today were even born. It has been falling outward, silent and faithful, for over half a century, long enough that many of the engineers who built it have grown old and passed away, while it flew on without them. 50 years of travel. And it is only just now slipping past the outer fringe of the sun's influence, still unimaginably far from any other star, still, by the scale of the galaxy, right there on our own doorstep. That is our farthest reach as a species. Half a century of flight, and we have barely stepped off the porch. We overtake it in just 3 years because we are so much faster than it ever was, and we allow ourselves a little pride at that. 50 years of its travel, undone by 3 of ours. We're doing so well. And hold on to that feeling of doing well, that mounting easy confidence, because the whole cruelty of what comes next depends on it. Everything so far has trained us to expect the pattern to keep going. Mars in 2 weeks, Pluto in a year, Voyager in 3. Each landmark harder than the last, yes, but each one still reachable. Still a matter of a few years, still the kind of journey a determined crew could actually make. Without noticing, your mind has been quietly building a ladder. 2 weeks, a year, a few years, and it fully expects the next rung to be maybe 10 years or 20. That's how ladders work. That's about as far as our imaginations can stretch. So keep that expectation firmly in place. That comfortable sense that the next step will be bigger, but still climbable, because the universe is about to kick the whole ladder out from under you. And now, there is only one landmark left. The true edge. The real outer boundary of our solar system. Not the last planet, but the very last thing that belongs to the sun at all. The far side of a vast, ghostly shell of icy debris that wraps all the way around us, called the Oort cloud. Cross that, and you are truly, finally, out in the open ocean of interstellar space, with the whole galaxy ahead of you. So how long does the last leg take in our impossibly fast ship, moving at the greatest speed humanity has ever achieved? 2,500 years. Say that number to yourself slowly, because this is the moment the whole picture cracks open. Not 2.5 years, not 250, 2,500 years. If our ship had left the moment the ancient Romans founded their republic, back when there was no such thing as an empire, no Caesar, no cathedrals, no printing press, no engines, no electricity. If it had launched then, at the fastest speed a human machine has ever reached, it would only be arriving at the edge of our own solar system right about now. Everything that has ever happened in recorded human history, start to finish, is how long that single last leg takes. And we were the ones being generous. We were already pretending we could fly faster than we can. Let me set the whole trip back down in front of you so you can feel its shape all at once. Mars, 2 weeks, Pluto, a year, past Voyager, a few years, and then the final step to the true edge, 2,500 years. Do you see what just happened? The steps went from weeks to a year to a handful of years, and then with no warning at all, straight to millennia. That's not a slope anymore. That's a wall the arithmetic hit and sailed clean over while we were still congratulating ourselves. And remember, this is the fantasy ship, the impossible one, flying at the greatest speed a human machine has ever reached. The real journey in the fastest thing we can actually build today wouldn't take 2,500 years to reach that edge. It would take tens of thousands. We only shrank it down to a single civilization's worth of time by cheating, by pretending. The honest number is far worse, and that's the quiet rule of this whole night. Out here, the honest number is always worse than the one you were hoping for. And here is the part that turns the ache into something close to vertigo. After all that, after 2,500 years of travelling through the dark, you arrive at the edge, and there is nothing there. No new world, no destination, no reward. Just more emptiness opening up ahead of you, vaster than everything you've already crossed. You have travelled for the entire span of human civilization, only to reach the beginning of the truly empty part. This is the barrier, not a wall, not a fence, just this, an ocean of nothingness so wide that our fastest machine, running for longer than we've had history, barely dips a toe into it. And the cruel little trick of it is exactly the thing I warned you about at the start. At every stage, there's a place that's very far away. And with enough cleverness and enough money and enough patience, we can just about reach it. Mars, Pluto, Voyager, each one feels like a victory. And then you zoom out one more time, and the ground drops away beneath you, and you see that everything you just crossed was nothing at all. And the worst part, the part that should make you laugh and then go very quiet, is that we have barely started zooming out. We're still standing in our own back garden. The galaxy hasn't even begun. So let your breathing slow a little here, because I know that's a lot of dark to take in at once, and there's no hurry. Nothing in that emptiness can reach you where you're lying. It's just a picture we're holding together, you and I, of how big the quiet really is. And there's a strange comfort available even here, in the middle of all that emptiness, if you'd like to take it. Because notice something. None of that vastness is a threat to you. Not one light year of it. All that lethal distance, all that killing cold, all those dead and frozen worlds, every bit of it is out there, and you are in here. Warm, breathing, held by a small world that has never once in your whole life let you slip off its surface into the dark. The size of space can only frighten you if you picture yourself out in the middle of it, and you're not. You're lying right now at the very centre of the one place in all of it that was ever going to feel like anything at all. Like warmth, like safety, like home. The immensity is real, and it is enormous. And it is not coming for you. It's simply the vast, quiet backdrop against which your small and impossibly lucky life is being lived. So let it be as big as it is. You don't have to cross a single inch of it tonight. You only have to lie here and let it be beautiful and far away. And the obvious question, the one you're probably already asking, is the right one. Fine, so we just need to go faster. Much, much faster. So why don't we? What would it actually take? Let's find out. Because there is a way to go faster. A real one, not science fiction. And for a moment, it's going to give us hope. So why don't we just go faster? It's the natural question, and the honest answer comes in two parts. The first part is the hard ceiling. As far as we know, there is no way, no real, non-magical way to travel faster than light, or to fold space, or to teleport, or to freeze a crew, and thaw them out unharmed centuries later. Those are wonderful ideas, and I'd love to be proven wrong about them. But right now, they live in stories, not in engines. And I want to be fair to those dreams, because they aren't foolish. Some of the sharpest minds alive have spent whole careers testing whether any of them might be coaxed out of the mathematics. A shortcut folded through space, a bubble that carries a ship along while space itself does the moving. a way to slow a human body almost to stillness and sleep out the centuries. Every so often, a serious paper appears suggesting that one of them might, in some extreme and exotic form, not be strictly forbidden by the laws as we understand them, but not strictly forbidden by the equations is a very, very long way from something we could ever actually build. And the honest state of things is that all of it remains, for now, firmly on the far side of the line between real physics and beautiful wishful thinking. I would genuinely love to be wrong about that, but tonight I have to give you the world as it actually is. So we have to set the warp drives aside and work with what physics actually allows. And I want to pause on that first part, the speed of light wall, because it isn't a mere engineering annoyance. It's one of the deepest and strangest facts in all of nature, and it's worth a moment of awe even as it dashes our hopes. The speed of light isn't just very fast, it appears to be a fundamental limit woven into the fabric of reality itself. The maximum speed at which anything, any object, any signal, any influence can ever move through the universe. It's not that we haven't built a good enough engine yet, it's that the universe seems to have a built-in speed limit, and it enforces it absolutely everywhere, for everything, with no exceptions ever found. Push a thing faster and faster toward that limit, and it gets harder and harder, needing more and more energy, until reaching the limit itself would take literally infinite energy, an impossible price. So light speed is not a wall we might one day tunnel through with a better rocket. As far as we can tell, it's a rule of existence, and that single rule, more than anything else, is what shapes the loneliness of the cosmos. If we could simply choose to go faster than light, the whole galaxy would be an afternoon's drive, and none of tonight's problem would exist. The barrier around us is built, at its foundation, out of that one deep law. And this is where a little real hope comes back. Physics allows quite a lot more than our clumsy chemical rockets manage today. There are propulsion ideas that are genuinely, physically possible, engines that might run on nuclear fusion, the same reaction that powers the sun, or even on antimatter, the most concentrated fuel the universe permits, releasing so much energy that they could push a ship to a real, meaningful fraction of the speed of light. We don't know how to build them yet, not remotely, and there are staggering problems in the way, problems of fuel and heat and sheer engineering that we've barely begun to face, but they don't break any laws, they're allowed. So let's be generous again, wildly, wonderfully generous, and imagine that some future humanity cracks it and builds a ship that can fly at 20% of the speed of light. 20% of light speed. Let me tell you how fast that is, because it leaves our earlier ship in the dust so completely you'll barely believe it. It's 60,000 kilometers every second. Not per hour, per second. In the time it takes you to say the word second, you've crossed 60,000 kilometers. At that speed, the edge of the solar system, the barrier that took our first ship 2,500 years to reach, is now just a few days away. And the nearest star to our own, a place called Alpha Centauri, that whole impossible interstellar crossing, comes down to about 20 years. 20 years, within a single human lifetime. For the first time all night, it feels like the door might actually open. A crew could leave young and arrive still alive at another sun. We can work with 20 years. Surely we can work with that. And for one bright moment, right here in the story, the whole ancient dream swings back within reach. 20 years to another sun. That's a career. That's a long marriage. That's a stretch of time a human being can actually picture and plan for and commit to. Fill a ship with volunteers, send them off in their 20s, and they'd arrive in their 40s, alive, blinking up at an alien star, the first of our kind ever to stand in the light of another sun. It's the oldest dream our species has, and for a single heartbeat, standing right here, it looks almost affordable. So hold that hope a moment longer. Feel how good it feels, how close, how possible, because this is the exact hope the next part of the story is going to take apart, gently and completely. Except there's a catch, and this catch is one that almost nobody thinks about. And once you hear it, you can't stop thinking about it. Because when you fly that fast, space itself turns against you. Here is the thing we never quite absorb. Space looks empty, and it is very nearly empty. But very nearly is not the same as completely. Scattered through the black, unimaginably thin, there are things. Stray atoms, whispers of gas, grains of dust, and occasionally something bigger. And here is the cruel twist that turns all that near nothing against you. Emptiness only protects you when you're moving slowly through it. The very same speed that was going to save you. The speed that shrinks a 20-year crossing down from a hopeless 10,000 is the thing that transforms every harmless speck in your path into a weapon. Slowness makes space gentle. Speed makes it lethal. And you cannot have the journey without the speed. When you're drifting slowly, none of that matters at all. You could pass through it for a lifetime and never notice, but you are not drifting slowly. You are moving at 60,000 kilometers per second, and at that speed, everything you touch becomes a weapon. Start with the smallest thing there is out there, a single atom. One lonely atom of iron, floating in the void, minding its own business. At 20% of light speed, when your ship slams into that one atom, it hits with enough energy to carve a tiny track of damage into your hull. A fraction of a millimetre deep. One atom. And space, thin as it is, has a great many atoms in it. Fly long enough, and your ship's leading edge would be sanded away, riddled with countless microscopic wounds, worn down by nothing more than the almost empty dark. And you can't simply slow down to avoid it either, and that's the trap closing. The entire point of going fast was to make the journey short enough for a human life to span it. Slow down to spare yourself the dust, and the crossing stretches straight back out into centuries, and your crew grows old and dies before they're a fraction of the way there. Speed is the only thing that makes the trip possible at all, and speed is the very thing that turns empty space into a barrage. The faster you fly, the sooner you would arrive, and the harder every single mote of dust strikes you along the way. You are caught between two walls that close in as you push against them. Too slow, and the sheer distance kills you. Too fast, and the dust does. Somewhere in that narrow gap sits the fastest a fragile, breathing crew can ever safely travel. And it may simply not be fast enough to matter. Of course, our future engineers would see that coming. They'd build a shield, a great protective barrier out in front of the ship, to soak up all those atomic impacts and keep the crew safe behind it. Good. That helps. But atoms aren't the only things out there. Every so often, drifting in the dark, there's a grain of dust, just a speck, something you would never notice on your fingertip. And when your ship meets a single grain of dust, at 20% of the speed of light, it does not go gently. It detonates. That tiny speck flashes into a small explosion, a burst of energy that gouges and grinds away at your shield. And if a mere speck of dust is a bomb, then imagine meeting something bigger, say a little pebble, a chip of rock the size of a golf ball, quietly floating where you happen to be going. Striking that at that speed would release more energy than the bomb that destroyed an entire city in a single morning in 1945. More than double it, in fact. Sit with how absurd that is. A rock you could toss from hand to hand. A thing so small you'd lose it in your pocket. And because you're moving so fast, the sheer energy of merely meeting it is greater than the most terrible weapon our species has ever turned on itself. That's not a property of the rock. The rock is nothing. A pebble, inert, harmless, drifting quietly in the dark, minding its own business for 1 billion years. It's a property of the speed. At 1/5 of the speed of light, the universe converts the gentlest imaginable touch into an act of devastation. Everything out there becomes a bomb. Not because space is full of bombs, but because you're moving fast enough to make a bomb out of anything at all. From a pebble. From something you could hold between 2 fingers. We won't even talk about hitting anything larger than that. We don't need to, because atoms and dust and pebbles are already enough. They may mark the real edge of how fast we can ever safely go, not just because we don't know how to build engines any stronger, but because the faster you fly, the more the almost empty universe turns into a shooting gallery, and every grain of nothing out there becomes a bullet aimed at your fragile, warm, living crew. So maybe, being hopeful, we accept that with a truly enormous shield, a ship could just about survive the crossing at 20% of light speed, battered, scarred, but intact, long enough to reach a nearby star in a human lifetime. Fine, let's grant even that. Let's say we make it. There's still one more disappointment waiting for us out there, and in some ways it's the quietest and the saddest of them all. Because after everything, after the speed and the shielding and the decades in the dark, we have to ask the question we've been avoiding. When we finally arrive somewhere, what's actually there? And the answer, almost everywhere we could realistically reach, is not much. Let me show you. Though before I do, let me be clear that I say all of this with a heavy heart because I love these places. Every one of those distant, deadly worlds is a genuine wonder, a whole planet, with its own weather and its own colours and its own strange geology, turning under a sun that isn't ours. To actually stand on one, to feel an alien gravity in your legs and breathe through a mask beneath an alien sky would be one of the most extraordinary things a human being could ever do. I'm not dismissing that for a second. Scientifically, and in the plain human hunger to see, they would be beyond all price. The disappointment isn't that they're worthless, it's that they're worthless as homes, that you couldn't live there, couldn't build anything lasting there, couldn't raise a life or a future beneath those skies, no matter how far you'd travel to arrive. They are museums, not houses, and you cannot move your family into a museum on the far side of an impossible sea. Let's send that crew to Alpha Centauri after all, the closest star system to our own, our most natural first destination, about 20 years away in our generous fast ship. We cram a handful of brave, slightly unlucky people into a small metal box and we send them off into the black. And we wait 20 years of waiting. And for them, 20 years of living inside a box roughly the size of a house. The same few faces, the same walls, the same recycled air, hurtling through a dark so total that the nearest light is years away in every direction. No new places, no fresh air, no stepping outside, just the low hum of the engines and the almost imperceptible crawl of unfamiliar stars for 2 full decades on the way to a world none of them have ever seen and none of them can be sure is worth it. It asks a kind of courage that's genuinely hard to imagine, not the sharp, bright courage of a single brave moment, but the long, grinding, patient courage of staying sane and kind and whole through 20 years of confinement in the emptiness. And remember, this is the easy version, the nearest one, the short hop to the closest star there is. Everything beyond it is longer and darker and harder still, and we wait. And years later, long after they've arrived, a message finally crosses the gulf back to Earth, and the whole world gathers to hear the first words humans have ever spoken from another star. And the message says, more or less, it's beautiful here. The star system is genuinely stunning up close, and every single world in it is utterly, hopelessly deadly. Nothing here can be lived on. we are doing wonderful science, and we are learning an enormous amount. And we are also completely exhausted and out of good food, and we would give anything for a new show to watch. And we are honestly not entirely sure what we were thinking when we came. There's a joke buried in that message, but there's something genuinely sobering under it too. Alpha Centauri is our best case. It's the closest star to our own, the very nearest neighbour in the entire galaxy, the one destination that is even remotely within reach. And even it, seen up close, is a place that would kill an unprotected human being in moments. If our nearest neighbour is a beautiful death trap, think about what that quietly says about everywhere else. It tells you that close and reachable and worth arriving at are three completely different things, and that out in space they almost never line up. The universe is generous with distance and desperately stingy with everything else. It will happily hand you a destination 20 years away. It just won't hand you one you'd actually want to reach. And that, it turns out, is the pattern. The heartbreaking, recurring pattern of deep space. Almost every destination, close enough for us to even dream of reaching, is, from a human point of view, a bitter disappointment. Not scientifically. Scientifically, every one of these worlds would be a treasure. And I don't want to undersell that wonder for a moment. To stand on the surface of another planet, under another sun, would be one of the greatest things our species could ever do. But if we're honest about what we'd actually find within reach, if 20% of light speed really is close to our ceiling, and we give a crew a realistic lifetime of travel, say 40 years out into the dark, then the entire sphere of space we could reach holds almost nothing worth the journey. Let me draw that sphere for you, because it's smaller and lonelier than you'd think. Picture a bubble around the sun, about 25 light years across, the little neighbourhood of stars we might, in the most hopeful future, someday touch. 25 light years. It sounds like a fair-sized piece of sky, so here's the gut check. That whole bubble is about 0.02% of our galaxy. Not 2%, 0.02%. A dot so small you couldn't even mark it honestly on a map of the Milky Way, because the dot itself would already be far too big. And the whole Milky Way is just one galaxy among hundreds of billions of others. So when I say this bubble is the neighbourhood we might one day reach, hold the true scale of it in your mind. We are talking about the few houses at the very end of our own cul-de-sac, while beyond them stretches a planet and a world and an entire universe of galaxies we will never once set foot in. That tiny bubble is the whole of our most hopeful ambition, and even it, as we're about to see, is mostly disappointment. Inside that whole reachable neighbourhood, there are only a few dozen stars. Most of them are small dim red stars, cooler and stranger than our sun, circled by worlds that range, as one might put it, from deadly to extremely deadly. Let me sit on those little red stars for a moment, because they're most of what's out there, and they make a harder home than they sound. A red dwarf is a small, cool, long-lived ember of a star, and to catch enough of its feeble warmth for liquid water, a planet has to huddle in very close, far closer than we orbit our sun. But huddling that close comes at a terrible price. For one thing, these small stars are prone to violent tempers. They throw off enormous flares, sudden blasts of radiation that can strip the air clean off a nearby world and sterilize its surface in an afternoon. For another, a planet orbiting that close usually becomes locked in place, one face turned forever toward its star and the other forever away, so that one side is a baked, blistering desert of endless day, and the other a frozen, lightless waste of endless night, with only a thin ribbon of maybe survivable twilight running between them. That is what, in the comfortable zone, so often actually means out there. Not a green field under a gentle sun, a tide-locked rock caught between fire and ice, bathed in the fury of a temperamental star. A handful of those worlds sit in the so-called comfortable zone, where water could in principle be liquid, but so does Mars in our own system, and Mars is a frozen, airless, radiation-scoured desert where you would die in minutes. Even the most Earth-like world we've spotted out there comes with no promises at all. You could travel your entire life, grow old in a metal room in the dark, and arrive at the very end at another Mars. Imagine that. A whole life spent crossing the void for a frozen wasteland. What a thing that would be to discover. Too late to turn around. And it wouldn't be one life either. For the truly distant targets, it would be many. Whole generations born and dying inside a single ship. Children who would never see the world their grandparents left. Tending a journey they didn't choose toward a destination none of them would live to reach. Imagine being born in that ship, halfway between two stars, in the middle of the endless dark, knowing Earth only as a story, and the destination only as a hope, with nothing outside the windows, but the same unchanging night your parents watched and their parents before them. And imagine the message finally crawling home, decades late, to an Earth that has long since moved on and half forgotten you. We made it, and it was not worth it. That is the shape of nearly every journey out there that we could realistically attempt. Not triumph, just an enormous, patient, heartbreaking effort spent to arrive somewhere that cannot hold you. The genuinely good worlds, the ones that might have real oceans and breathable air, and maybe even some quiet form of life already living in them, those may well exist. I believe they probably do, but they're almost certainly not in our little bubble. They could be hundreds of light years away. They could be thousands. And a light year is not a phrase you should let slide past your ear as just another big word. It is the distance light itself travels in a single year. Light, the fastest thing that exists, moving at that absolute cosmic speed limit, running flat out for 12 unbroken months. Our imaginary fast ship at a fifth of that speed needs 5 whole years to cross just one of them. So a world 1,000 light years away is not 1,000 of something small. It is 5,000 years of travelling, in the best ship we can even dream of building, longer than the whole of recorded history, spent crossing toward a single planet we merely hope might turn out to have breathable air. The good places aren't only far, they are far in a way the little word far was never, ever built to carry. And a journey of thousands of light years, even at a fifth of the speed of light, is a journey of many thousands of years, far, far beyond a single life, beyond 100 lives, beyond anything we currently have the faintest idea how to build or sustain. So this is where the walk to the barrier finally leaves us. The distances are too vast. There's a deadly limit on how fast we can go, and even the few places we could reach may not be worth the reaching. Let me say the honest shape of it plainly, without softening it, because you've earned the truth after coming this far with me. To actually leave, to cross to somewhere genuinely worth crossing to, and build a real, living, connected human presence out among the stars, we would need technology so far beyond anything we possess that it's hard even to describe. Not better rockets, not bigger budgets, something as far beyond our best fusion dreams as a jet engine is beyond a campfire. Our finest current ideas, nuclear rockets, enormous light sails, the whole arsenal of the barely possible, are set against these distances almost heartbreakingly underpowered. They are a child's paper aeroplane thrown at an ocean. We would have to become an entirely different kind of civilization, wielding physics we have not yet even discovered, to make so much as a dent in the problem. Maybe Someday we will, but we are not remotely close. And for now, for us and for everyone we'll ever know, the wall holds. We happen to live in a particularly empty, particularly quiet corner of the galaxy, a small still pond, a long way from anywhere interesting. And there's an irony in that worth sitting with for a moment. For most of our history, we assumed we were the centre of everything, that the whole cosmos turned around us, that we were the entire point of it. And the truth turned out to be almost the opposite. We're off in a quiet backwater, a sleepy edge of one ordinary galaxy among billions, tucked into an unremarkable little pocket where not very much is happening for a very long way in every direction. It could sound like a demotion, and for a proud species, maybe it stings. But there's a softness hidden in it too. Quiet backwaters are where you rest. No one builds a home in the roaring, blazing centre of things. And we, as it happens, ended up in the calm part of the galaxy, the still pond, the country lane, the place far from all the noise. Of all the corners in all the cosmos to be gently stranded in, we were handed a peaceful one. And the longer you sit with all of it together, the less the dream of leaving seems to make any sense at all. And here is the part that makes the silence around us feel deeper still. It may not be only us. For a long time we've comforted ourselves with the thought that the galaxy might be teeming with life, that out there, among the hundreds of billions of stars, there could be countless other civilizations, some of them far older and wiser and more capable than we are. And maybe there are. I hope there are. But if everything we've traced tonight is true, if the distances really are this vast and the speed limit really is this stubborn, and the dark between the stars really is this deadly, then every one of those civilizations is running into the exact same barrier we are. Each of them, wherever they are, would be sealed inside its own small pocket of the galaxy, able to look up and see the other stars and ache toward them, and never quite able to cross the gulf in any way that matters. Not because they aren't clever enough, because the universe is simply, evenly, too big for everyone, everywhere. Sit with that picture for a moment, because it's one of the strangest and most haunting in all of science. A galaxy scattered with islands of life, thousands of them, maybe millions, each one glowing quietly on its own small world, each one gazing up into the same impossible dark, each one just as stranded as we are, neighbours who can never visit, cousins who can never meet, a whole crowded, living galaxy in which everyone is, forever, alone together. On the face of it, that might be the loneliest thought there is, and I don't want to rush past the loneliness of it, because it's real, and it deserves a moment of its own. There has always been something in us that quietly assumed we would meet them one day. The others, the neighbours, whoever else is out there in the dark. Nearly every story we tell about the future is built around that meeting. The first contact, the galactic community, the great conversation finally opening up between the stars. And the plain physics of tonight gently suggests that the meeting may never come. Not because no one is there, but because the spaces in between are simply too wide for anyone to cross in either direction, ever. We may spend our entire existence as a species close enough to glimpse other fires burning on distant hills, and never once close enough to walk over and warm our hands at one. That is a genuine kind of grief, and I won't pretend it away. And yet, this is the part I keep turning over. There's something almost tender hidden inside it too. Because if it's true, then our being stuck here isn't a failure. It isn't a punishment handed to us alone, some cosmic misfortune that only we drew. It's just the shape of things. It's the ordinary condition of being alive anywhere in a universe this size. We're not the one unlucky species that got left behind while everyone else roams free among the stars. We're one island among many, all of us keeping our small fires lit against the same enormous night, all of us held gently close to home by the same vast hand. There's a kind of quiet company in that, even across distances we could never hope to cross. We are alone, but we are alone in precisely the same way as everyone who has ever looked up at their own sky and wondered. And there is an odd, real warmth in knowing you're not the only one sitting by a small fire in the dark. There's a last thread of hope worth naming before we turn toward home. Our solar system is not nailed in place. It drifts, slowly, endlessly, through the galaxy on a great looping orbit of its own that takes hundreds of millions of years to come round once. And right now, by chance, we happen to be passing through a particularly empty, particularly quiet stretch of the journey. A lonely country road, far from the bright and crowded centre of things. But give it long enough, and we may drift into busier neighbourhoods, nearer to other stars and other worlds. Not soon, not on any timescale that means a thing to you or me tonight, but the map is not frozen. Part of the barrier is simply made of where we happen to be standing at this particular moment in the life of the galaxy. And even that, given deep enough time, quietly shifts. And I find that oddly soothing to hold, not as any real hope of escape, but as a reminder that even the walls of our situation are slowly moving. Nothing about our place in the cosmos is truly fixed. The sky itself is drifting. The constellations you can pick out tonight are not the ones your distant ancestors saw, and not the ones your distant descendants will see. Over the long ages, the stars slide silently into new shapes. We are all aboard a slow and enormous voyage already, the whole solar system, carrying you and everyone you've ever known, sweeping in a great circle around the heart of the galaxy, a single lap of which takes longer than complex life has existed on Earth. So you don't actually have to go anywhere tonight. You are already travelling, faster than any ship we could ever build, on the grandest voyage there is. And it is carrying you gently onward through the dark, whether you stay awake for it or not. Which, tonight, you are finally allowed to stop doing. Now, this is the moment where I have to stop and turn around and be very honest with you, because I've been leading you somewhere, and I don't want to leave you in the wrong place. Everything I've just told you is true under the physics we understand today. But I want to tell you a small story, because it matters. In the year 1903, a great and serious newspaper ran a thoughtful piece explaining, with total confidence, that building a flying machine that could actually carry a person through the air was very likely impossible, and that even if it could somehow be done, it might take humanity somewhere between 1 and 10 million years to figure out how. 1 to 10 million years. That was the sober, expert view, and do you know how long it actually took? From the day that piece was printed for two brothers on a windy beach to lift a machine into the air and fly. 69 days. Not a million years, not 1,000, 69 days. And from that first fragile hop to a human being walking on the surface of the moon was a mere 66 years, less than a single long lifetime. So if there is one thing the history of our species teaches over and over, it's this. Almost nothing makes a person look more foolish than confidently predicting what technology can never do. Every wall we've ever called permanent, someone eventually walked straight through. Think of the surgeons who were certain that washing their hands before an operation was a pointless superstition. Think of the serious credentialed people who explained that the sound barrier could never be broken, that a body or a machine would simply tear itself apart at the edge of it, right up until an aircraft calmly flew through. Think of how confidently it was said that the atom could never be split, that a machine could never outthink a grandmaster, that we would never set foot on the moon. Every one of those was the sober expert consensus of its day, and every single one turned out to be wrong, often within one human lifetime of being declared impossible. The universe has a long and patient habit of humbling anyone who says the word never out loud with real confidence. So I'm not going to say it about this either. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you it can never happen. That's the one thing I won't claim. Maybe a future humanity, as far beyond us as we are beyond the people who first tamed fire, finds a way we simply cannot picture from here. Some new physics, some patience we don't have, some kind of ship and mind and lifespan we can't yet imagine. Maybe, genuinely, maybe. What I can tell you is only this, that for us and for anyone we will ever know, and for a very long time to come, the barrier is real, and it is made of the honest size of the universe. We are, for now, held here. And that word, held, is the one I want to leave you with, because it turns out to mean something much gentler than trapped. Let me show you what I mean. We've spent this whole night looking outward, out past the planets, out past the edge, out into that endless, deadly, disappointing dark. And it's easy to come away from all of that feeling, small and stranded and a little bereft, as though we've been handed a life sentence in a cell the size of a solar system. But I want you to turn around now. Just turn around in your mind and stop looking out into the cold. Look back, look at where you already are. Because here is the thing, all that emptiness is quietly telling us, if we're willing to hear it kindly. You are not stranded in a wasteland. You are standing in the one warm room in an unimaginably vast and freezing house. We had the picture exactly backwards all night, and now we get to turn it right side up. We kept looking at the emptiness as the thing we were locked out of, all those stars we can't reach, all those worlds held forever beyond us. But flip it around, that same emptiness is the thing we're safely locked away from. The dark isn't a country we're barred from entering. It's the freezing wilderness outside the walls of the one house that happens to be warm, and you're not pressed against the window, staring out into it in longing. You are deep inside, near the fire, exactly where anything alive would want to be. The barrier doesn't keep you out of anything good. It keeps everything good, everything warm, everything breathing, everything you have ever loved, gathered together in one small bright place within your reach, with you. What a strange mercy that turns out to be, once you stop and look at it the right way round. Everything we cross tonight, the light years, the dust, the deadly stars, the frozen masses waiting at the end of every hopeful journey. All of that is what it's like out there. And you don't live out there. You live here, on a small blue world, wrapped in a thin blanket of breathable air, at exactly the right distance from a warm and steady star, with liquid water and green things, and other warm creatures and everything you have ever loved. In all that immensity we just travelled through, this is the one place that isn't trying to kill you. This is the one place built, against staggering odds, for you to simply be. We tend to think of the vastness as a prison, and the barrier as a cruelty, but turn it over and it becomes the opposite. The same enormous emptiness that keeps you from leaving is the very thing that makes this place precious beyond measuring. If the stars were close, if good worlds were everywhere, if you could hop between them like villages, then home would be nothing special, just one stop among millions. It's the immensity of the dark that makes the light rare. It's the deadliness of out there that makes the safety of here a kind of miracle. And it isn't only the safety of here that's rare, it's the timing of it too, because you don't merely live in a rare place. You live in a rare moment. The universe will not always have stars. Far in the future, further than any of us can truly picture, the last of them will burn out, one by one, until the whole cosmos settles into a cold and endless dark, with no fires left anywhere at all. But you were not born into that long ending. You were born now, in the bright chapter, while the stars are still burning, while there is still warmth and light, and a living world turning gently beneath you. Out of all the vast ages of the universe, the empty and frozen ones will outnumber this luminous one beyond all counting. And yet you arrived here, in the brief and precious window, when there is still so much light left to see by. You are not only in the one warm place in all that dark, you are here in the one warm time. That is not a small thing to have been handed. That is very nearly everything. You were never meant to be flung across the void into the cold. You were meant to be exactly where you are, held small and warm in the one bright pocket of an ocean of night. Think for a moment of everything that had to be true for that to be so. A star steady enough to burn calmly for billions of years, never flaring hot enough to scorch you away. A world at exactly the right distance from it, not the blistering day side of some tide-locked rock, not a frozen and airless Mars, but here, where water stays liquid and air stays breathable, and the temperature, most days, sits close enough to the warmth of your own body that you rarely have to think about it at all. An invisible, magnetic shield wrapped around the entire planet, quietly turning aside the radiation that scours other worlds bare, oceans, an atmosphere, a sky you can breathe beneath and fall asleep under. Out of every place we visited tonight, out of the dozens of stars in our reachable bubble and the billions past it, we found not one other spot where a person could simply lie down in the open and rest, unprotected, and be perfectly fine. And you're lying on the one that works, not sealed in a suit, not huddled behind a shield, just here, in the open air of the only house, in all that sky with its lights on, and its warmth running. We spend so little of our lives being astonished by that, because it has always been true, and the things that are always true slowly become invisible to us. But tonight you got to see the alternative. The cold, the distance, the deadly everywhere else, and held up against all of that, the sheer, improbable gentleness of a world that simply lets you live on its surface ought to be almost overwhelming. You did not have to be born somewhere survivable. Almost nowhere is. And yet here you are, breathing easily in the warm. And there's a strange gift hidden in the fact that we can't leave. One I've come to find genuinely consoling on the nights the mind wants to be anywhere but here. So much of the restlessness of being a person is the ache to be elsewhere. The next place, the better place, the somewhere out there where things will finally be right. We spend our lives leaning forward, straining toward a horizon, and most of the time, that leaning is exhausting, and it never quite ends, because every horizon you finally reach only reveals another one behind it. The next milestone, the next place, the next version of your life, where things will at last feel settled. We chase it the way our ancestors chased the next valley, forever certain that the good place is somewhere we simply haven't gotten to yet. It is one of the oldest and most tiring habits of the human heart. But space, of all things, offers a strange and total cure for it. Because space says, with perfect finality, there is no next valley. Not one you could ever reach. The good place is not out ahead of you, waiting to be earned by more travelling. It is underneath you, right now, holding you up in the dark. For once in your life, the universe is not asking you to go further. It is telling you, as plainly as it knows how, that you're allowed to stop. But the universe, in its enormous quiet way, has drawn a gentle circle around us and said, not out there. Here. Everything you need is already here. You don't have to reach the stars to have arrived. You already arrived the moment you were born onto the one world in all that dark that could hold you. There is nowhere you have to get to tonight. There is nowhere better waiting just over the next hill of space. This This small warm world, this quiet room, this breath, this moment, this is the good place. This is the destination. You're already standing in it. We spent this whole night dreaming of arrival, of finally reaching some far shore after the long cold crossing. But look what happens when you follow that dream honestly. All the way out, there is no better shore. The crossing leads only to colder, deadlier, emptier places than the one we set out from, which means the arrival you were aching toward already happened a very long time ago, without a single mile of travel. You are the crew that made it. You are living on the destination the whole galaxy would envy if it could see you. A warm, wet, breathing world, safe beneath its air, at exactly the right distance from a gentle, steady star. The great voyage isn't ahead of you, it's behind you. You were carried here effortlessly before you could even walk, and you've been standing on the finish line your entire life without ever quite realizing it. There is a deep permission in that, if you let it settle all the way in. You can stop straining toward the horizon, because the horizon, it turns out, is the very place you're already lying. Nothing better is coming over the next hill of space. Nothing better needs to. This was always the place you were trying to reach. So let yourself stop reaching, just for tonight. Let the whole, enormous, beautiful, deadly universe go on being enormous and beautiful and deadly far away without you, while you stay exactly where it's safe. You don't have to hold any of it up. You don't have to cross any of it. The dark can keep its distances and its dust and its frozen worlds. None of it is asking anything of you. Your only task right now is the easiest one there has ever been. To be here, warm, on the one world that was made to hold you, and to let yourself sink into how completely, safely home you already are. Notice how completely the ground beneath you is holding you up. This small blue world, carrying you gently through the night. You are not adrift, you are held by the ground beneath you, by the air around you, by the thin, warm miracle of a habitable world turning slowly under a sky. Let that holding take your whole weight. There is nowhere else you need to be. In all the vastness we just crossed together, out of every world we could ever reach, there is exactly one that feels like this, like warmth, like safety, like belonging, and you're lying on it right now. Not floating in a cold ship somewhere between the stars, not shivering on the twilight edge of some tide-locked rock, not staring out a small window at 40 more years of dark. Here, on soft ground, under a sky you can breathe, on a warm world that is, at this very moment, carrying you gently around a gentle star, exactly as it has done every single night of your life, without once asking you to help. You don't have to steer it. You don't have to keep it turning or hold it in its orbit or do anything at all to earn your place on it. It has been holding you effortlessly and faithfully since before you had a name, and it will go on holding you all through this night while you sleep, whether you spare it a thought or not. There is nothing in all the universe you need to do right now, except let it. Let your breathing slow and settle. Somewhere far above you the stars are burning, unthinkably far, in a dark so wide that nothing we build will ever cross it. And that's all right. Let them burn out there, cold and distant and lovely. You don't have to go to them. You never did. They were never home. This is home. The small bright place, the warm pocket in the endless night. The one still pond in the whole vast galaxy where a tired mind can finally lie down and rest. Feel how quiet it is here. Not the quiet of emptiness. We've had more than enough emptiness tonight, but the quiet of safety. The hush of a place with walls and warmth and air and everything you could need already within arm's reach. Out there, the silence is the silence of the void, cold and total and endless. But in here, The quiet is the softer kind, the hush of a house at night with everyone home, and the doors shut and nothing left to do until morning. That is the quiet settling over you now. Let it lie across you like a blanket. The stars can wait. They will be there tomorrow night, and every night after, burning far away in a dark that will never once ask you to cross it. You have no journey to make. You have nowhere to be but here, and here is the safest, warmest, most improbable place in everything we looked at tonight. The universe drew its great circle around you, not to shut you in, but to keep you close to the only fire in all that dark. So let the great ship go now, that imaginary vessel we built together at the start of the night, the one we sent out through the dust and the dark towards stars that would only ever have broken our hearts. Let it drift on without you. Let it sail past Pluto, past Voyager, past the far edge of everything, out into the endless emptiness it was always going to find. You don't need it. You were never really the one who had to leave. You were only ever the one who got to stay. Here, on the good world, in the warm room, at the end of the single journey in all of this that actually arrived somewhere worth arriving. So let the ship grow smaller and smaller in the dark, carrying all that old restlessness away with it, and stay exactly where you are. So come in from the cold now, all the way in, and stay. You are not lost in space. You are exactly, safely home. And home is the one place you never have to leave.